Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to thank the organizers for extending their kind invitation towards me and enabling me to participate in this wonderful forum. Let's see if I can operate this. Okay. So we're, kind of aware what cancer is all about. It's about uncontrolled growth of cells. What we sometimes overlook or not think clearly about is that it's not a single disease. It is actually a group of diseases, about 100 different cancers that we know of existing. In this group of diseases, what happens is that abnormal cells divide without any control. But what we need to appreciate that each of the diseases in this group that we collectively call cancer needs a different kind of management, different kind of treatment, different kind of diagnostic procedures, different kind of care. So research in this field is really challenging. So here's a slide showing what exactly happens, how a cancer cell might renegade. So normally what happens is that you have cells dividing, going along their cycles. And if there is an encountering of a cell damaging process or a DNA damaging process, what happens is quickly this cell is killed by a process known as apoptosis or some other form of cellular death. In cancer, what happens is that in spite of the fact that a damage or a mutation might have occurred, these cells can go on dividing. They are not cleared from the system, and they can acquire a second mutation, and then a third, and a fourth, and then what happens is that all the cell cycle checkpoints are sort of overridden, and then you end up getting uncontrolled growth. So cancer, as when you look at all the reports, this is a World Health Organization report, it is a global killer. This has so far accounted for 7.4 million deaths worldwide, and this is increasing. In looking at the data in India, it is emerging as the third biggest killer. And I'll go and show you the different kinds of mortality that is there in India. What is very serious is that most of these patients reach hospitals only in very advanced stages of disease. So in many cases, what happens in the developed world is that because there are routine screening mechanisms, there is routine care, oftentimes a cancer would be caught early and then intervention can happen. But unfortunately, most of the patients in our country, when there is little to be done. The first line of treatment is still cytotoxic agents. These are just agents that kill cells, along with some targeted therapeutics, which are expensive and not easily affordable. The current treatments so far with these cytotoxic agents are dose limited because they have serious toxicity issues. So you can only give a certain dose, sometimes a suboptimal dose, and that cannot take care of the tumor cells. So this, because of the side effects and the toxicity issues, these impact on quality of life. So the main causes of death in India, if you look at this red sector in the pie chart, is through infectious diseases, as we all know. The following closely by is the heart attacks and cardiovascular diseases. Then some other diseases that we have clubbed together, diseases or death due to accident or injuries. And here is so far the fifth largest killer in India, but as I showed you in the previous slide, it's emerging as the third. So these are the numbers that in the number of cases of cancer patients in India, which was about 2.25 million cases in 2006, but by 2011 and it predicted in 2016 to be almost 4 million cases. So Again, going back to the World Health Organization report, 70% of all cancers occur in developing countries like ours, and the current mortality rate in India, although at an 8%, in the next 10 to 20 years, it is predicted to go up to 12.5%. So the treatments that are currently available are very, very expensive, and the newer drugs that are developed are mostly in the West, so they don't really take care of the Indian constitution, because the way our genes are expressed could be quite different from the ones in the West. So, but the drugs that we are still using over here are either directly obtained from there or cheaper generic versions, and we really don't do much research on what would be the ideal treatment, the ideal therapeutic regime for a cancer patient in India. So there is a huge unmet need for developing anti-cancer drugs in our country. So again, looking at the data, the major cancers that lead to death among men are those of the trachea, bronchus, and lung. Some oral cancers, which is really very high, especially among men, followed by esophagus, prostate, and the others. In women, the highest cause that leads to death among is uterine cancer, the cervical cancer, followed by breast. And again, oral cancer is there, although not as significantly as breast or cervical, but still it accounts for many deaths among women as well. So this is a slide shown by Uday Foundation that in the year 2010 alone, 84,000 men and 36,000 women died due to tobacco-related cancer, which could be either lung cancer or oral cancer or both. So what we could do as a responsible citizen is spread awareness. And sort of encourage not to smoke cigarettes or biris, or not to consume gutka or tobacco in betel leaf. This is something that we could sort of propagate and educate the people. So we could, in raising awareness, we could sort of encourage people to diet and exercise, and then encourage women who can afford it to at least do routine mammograms after the age of 40, as is done in the West. Encourage young women to go for vaccination against HPV-caused cervical cancer, or encourage hepatitis B vaccination, which also gives a lot of protection against several kinds of liver cancer. But what happens is that in developing countries, there are vicious cycles feeding off of each other. So what do I mean by that? The greater the poverty, the poorer the health and the ability to combat poverty. The greater the poverty, the less the education. The less the knowledge, the less the ability to create knowledge. The more limited the evidence, the less efficient the action. The less attention to prevention, the higher the incidence of cancer. And the worse the access to care, the more advanced the cancer. And obviously, the more advanced the cancer, the shorter the survival. So yes, we can raise awareness, but there are certain limitations with which we sort of have to cross-connect these vicious cycles and stop this from happening. So we really have to reach out to the masses. So if you look at expenditures in the United States alone, it is predicted in the year 2020 that the cost of cancer would be $158 billion. And this is keeping in mind that all the current therapies would cost the same 8 years from now, which is not going to be true. So actually this is going to be a much higher number. In India, in the year 2010, we spent 270 million US dollars. So looking at these numbers, are we ready? Are we there? I mean, are we there yet? Because the mortality is increasing to 12.5%. So that means all those people are going to die of cancer. What about all those people who have been diagnosed and still need treatment? So, socially, medically, as researchers, are we there yet to combat this huge burden? Just to give you a few more examples what treatments might cost, these are the average US dollar prices for drugs that have been discovered in the West, available in the West, and you have to get them. Avastin, $7,000 per dose. Tarceva, $4,500 per dose. Xalkori, a new drug against non-small cell lung cancer, $9,600 per month. Nexvar, $4,300 per dose. And really, what are we looking at? Can our people be even able to afford these? Can we actually promise life to each one of us, giving medications that are so costly? So one way out would be to make cheaper generics. I'm sure you must have heard in the news that the Indian government would make the 2.8 lakh drug available for 9,000 rupees now. So that is one way of making some medication available. But again, 9,000 is also quite a high number for people living below the poverty line. What could be the other way? It could be through doing in-house research. We have people, we have brains such as yours, get them together, get the resources, and discover some in-house drugs. So our goal, Invictus Oncology's goal, is to develop next generation oncology drugs from India for global impact. One thing, we hope that we can make all these treatments available at a reasonable rate. The other thing is that when we do research in India, taking patient samples from India, we're actually trying to find therapies that could be specific for Indian patients. So a little bit about Invictus Oncology. It was founded last year in April. It was co-founded by Dr. Mashilkar and Dr. Shiladitya Sengupta. We have a patented platform technology, which is a novel platinum coordination environment, which I'm going to explain in a bit. And this, what it does is that it increases anti-tumor efficacy with reduced toxicity. The opportunity for the market is a $3.6 billion global market for platinum-based chemotherapeutics, as platinum-based drugs are the frontline chemotherapy for more than 70% of all cancers. We are a very strong team. We have attracted a team of scientists from top global institutions. This is our team. Shiladitya Sengupta, who holds a faculty position at Harvard Medical School and has founded several different companies. Raghunath Mashilkar, who is ex-DG of CSIR, and we are funded by Navam Capital, and Rajiv Mantri is a partner. And these are our team of scientists, and we are currently developing the scientific and clinical advisory boards. Our mission is to emerge as a leader in the global oncology market through a deep innovation-based product pipeline with outstanding teamwork and integrity. In the process, we want to build a company that combines raising social awareness along with therapeutics emerging from cutting-edge science. So what we do basically, we take an approved chemotherapeutic and then we modify it to make it a targeted and improved chemotherapeutic. So it's a triple-pronged approach. The platform de-risks business model because we are dealing with already approved drugs. We're making them better. We're making them less toxic, more efficacious. We have already exclusively licensed a broad composition of matter patent on novel platinum environments, which we are designing for developing our chemotherapeutics. And this is licensed from Brigham and Women's Hospital, Harvard Medical School. And we are also building relationships with oncology leaders in India who give us clear perspective about where we should direct our research at, how we can molecularly understand the Indian cancers. So what do we exactly work upon? cisplatin is the most common platinum chemotherapeutic, which is used as a first-line treatment for many, many cancers. So cisplatin is a very tiny molecule. It has 2 chlorine groups, and once inside the cell, these chlorine groups leave and they are aquated, so water molecules take their place. And now this intercalates into DNA and stops DNA replication, and the cells die. There are a couple of different kinds of platinum drugs. So here in cisplatin, this process, this aquation process is really, really fast. Therefore, it leads to a lot of toxicity. Normal cells are also affected. So there have been designs where the chlorine atoms have been replaced by oxygen atoms, so creating dicarboxylator bonds. And here the rate of aquation is slowed down. But what happens is, yes, there is less toxicity with carboplatin and oxaliplatin, but because of the slow rate of aquation, it is less efficacious. So it doesn't really get aquated really that well, and DNA replication can continue in cancer cells. So what Dr. Shiladitya Sengupta, our co-founders lab did was they engineered a novel polymer where this platinum was complexed to the monomeric unit by 1 monocarboxylator bond, which is a stable bond, but the other oxygen atom formed a coordinate bond. So this is weaker. Can get the aquation step can be faster, not as fast as cisplatin, but definitely faster than carboplatin or oxaliplatin. So this leads to efficient platinum release, increased efficacy, and you can complex this with anything you may deem suitable. So just to show you a little bit of data, and I'll try not to go too much into the science, but here is free oxaliplatin, which is used to treat metastatic breast cancer cells. This is our drug, which has self-assembled into nanoparticles, and you can see that when you look at the number of cells that are alive following the treatment with these drugs, this curve has shifted to the left with our drug. This means less quantity of the drug is needed for killing the cells. So when we take animals, these are ovarian cancer models, and we treat them either with a vehicle, which could be water, or the free cisplatin, or our cisplatin nanoparticle. You can see with what treatment with just a vehicle, the tumor has really progressed, and cisplatin reduces it somewhat, but our nanoparticle makes the tumor go away completely, as you can see the disappearance of the red stain. And although it is so efficacious, if you look at the platinum distribution in the tumor as compared to other organs such as the kidney and the spleen and the liver, this red bar is cisplatin in its native form. So yes, it is taken up by the tumor, but it is also taken up by the kidney, spleen, and liver. And our drug, because it self-assembles into 200 nanometer size nanoparticles, is compartmentalized away from all these organs. So through the leaky vasculature of the tumor, the uptake is really high, as shown by the blue bar, but the kidneys, spleens, and livers are spared. So the toxicity is reduced. And basically these show the same thing, and I don't want to take more time. So the other thing that we are sort of, we are kind of developing the platform. This was technology that we have licensed out from Harvard, but the thing that we're trying to develop in-house over here is that we have sort of taken Dr. Ulrich's magic bullet concept. He won the Nobel Prize in 1908, and his magic bullet concept is basically seek out the disease-causing cells and destroy them specifically. So if you imagine an antibody that directs against a specific antigen, and then if you could empower the antibody with toxicity abilities, with cell-killing properties, then what would happen is that, imagine this to be a tumor cell expressing an antigen, which is just a protein molecule, that is not expressed in normal cells. And this antibody targets this antigen, so engages with this antigen. And now if you have empowered the antibody with a payload, which is the cytotoxic or the cell-killing drug, then the antibody engages with the antigen, gets internalized into the cell, and then because of the environment in the cell, the drug is released, and then the cell is killed specifically. Normal cells are spared because there are no antigens and the antibody cannot bind it. So what we do, we take a monoclonal antibody targeting any specific antigen of a tumor cell. We take a drug which can kill cells and then put the two together using a linker. So yeah, so the antibody is specific for a tumor-associated antigen that has restricted expression on normal cells. The drug is designed to kill target cells when internalized and released. And then the tricky part is the linker, because you have to make sure that this whole moiety is stable in circulation when you have injected the patient. But once inside the tumor cell, this linker has to dissolve so that the active ingredient is released and can kill the cell. But once we can achieve that with this linker, and we have designed a very, very novel linker in our company, what will happen is that it can increase the therapeutic dose of the drug at the tumor site, because this is only delivered to the tumors. And also reduces exposure to healthy tissues, because these would not affect the cells that don't express this specific antigen, and thereby decreasing toxicity. So these are only two of the pipelines that I shared with you today. And with all the other pipelines that we have going on in our company, looking at cancers that are specific to the Indian context, we hope to be able to reach the treatments, the therapies, to every Indian, to every cancer patient across the globe and our country. And thank you.